Oh, yeah, you're good.
So let's call the meeting to order at 6:02 on June 17th, 2026. Good timing. So the first item on the agenda would be public comments on items not on the agenda for discussion, but not action. Mr. Dyer, no? Okay. So next is town reports. And Vika had a pretty extensive collection of information in this packet. So I'll just open it up. First, Vika, if there's anything you want to emphasize or say it's important, and then questions.
Yep, I'll run through the TA report first, and then see if you have any questions and then move on to the treasurers. So with the TA report, there are some positions that are advertised on the town website. We have some positions opening up. Harbor master position has not yet been put up there. That is directly connected to a joint meeting with Long Island. So you all received an email today about a joint meeting. There was some back and forth with the Long Island fellow and some confusion. Well, I have all of it here. The dates for that particular meeting, we have July 7th from 12 to 1, July 8th from 12 to 1, July 10th, 11 a.m. or 1 p.m. The purpose of this meeting, it is going to be at the GP cog office in Portland. Long Island representatives and Shebang representatives will be there. The meeting will be facilitated by GP cog. The purpose is really to engage in a discussion of how the two islands can join forces on mutually needed services, but the primary focus of this particular discussion is going to be focused on the harbor master. Both islands are currently in need of a harbor master, so the discussion is going to focus around whether there is an opportunity to join to create one position that will cover both islands. And then after that discussion, it will lead to a better understanding of what the Shebang needs is, and the position will be advertised after that. So that's relative to that. Can I, if it's possible, get a general idea if there is a date out of those dates that listed that could work for a majority of you to attend that meeting?
I'm sorry, could you say them again?
July 7th, 12 p.m., July 8th, 12 p.m., July 10th, 11 or 1.
So I cannot do the 10th or the 11th, but I can do the 7th and 8th.
So 7th, 8th, or 10th.
No 10th.
Okay.
About that weekend.
So it's a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Fridays are the days.
Yeah, and all of these dates work for GP cog and Long Island. So
Works for me.
7th and 8th.
Either one. Either one.
okay. Carol and David.
I think I'll be all right.
Yeah, I'll just see if I can. I mean, it seems like the majority.
So majority is gonna be a 7th. Wait, Richard, I'm sorry, you couldn't do the 10th.
7th or 8th, but not the 10th.
7th or 8th, okay. The
So,
sooner the better is good. So I will respond with July 7th or 8th and narrow down.
and do you have a sense how long it might last?
So I'm hoping that we're there no more than an hour and a half. It's just, and that's what with GP cog facilitating for those who have engaged in GP cog, which all of you did with the select board retreat, but then the facilitation that took place with the parking lot summer. Really what we're looking for is what are some of the shared services, and primarily focusing on harbor master and really going through what are the needs, what do we want, will this work? Because I would like to try to, as I'm sure everyone else, figure out what the harbor master situation would be this summer.
Between the 7th and the 8th, for the 7th. But I can make the 8th work if I have.
Okay, good to know. All right. what you'll expect from me in the coming days is probably an email confirming the date, and that's the date that'll be. Pleasant Island, same information that has, been up, the work is ongoing. And then really the only other, decision off of the select board, off of the town administrator report is historically, this is the time of year the select board reverts to having one meeting in the month of July and August. So I'm bringing it in front of you to see if that is something you would like to do, in light of the summer being a very, very busy season. And if so, pick the select board meetings that will be that one meeting a month, and then we can ensure that we can advertise that properly.
Are you asking us to decide right now if we want 1 or 2 meetings a month?
This is the time frame that the boards have decided in the past, whether to keep it. Last year, it was kept at 2 meetings, but prior to that, the boards have typically dropped it to 1 meeting. Just in light of busy summer seasons and a lot of other meetings going on to kind of take some pressure off of the volunteers.
So given what we have going on, do you have a recommendation?
I don't have a recommendation one way or another. Next select board meeting, regardless whether you have 1 or 2, there's gonna be a lot of annual appointments. And there is a lot going on, so the board can afford to continue doing 2 meetings, but if you don't, just know that, some discussions could be delayed. At the end of the day, the board can always, if there is a need, schedule a meeting, so I'm kind of, it doesn't matter. I think it's, you are the volunteers that are putting the time and the commitment into it. So I would lean towards what your preference is, to be honest.
I don't care.
So I think July 1st is the one we need to have because of the appointments. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that means we wouldn't have the next one until August 5th. So it is it easier to,
Does it have to be July 1st?
No,
No,
oh,
we just have to have, the next meeting will be appointments,
Yeah.
whatever date we pick.
yeah.
okay.
And are you,
And you could do, if you do wanna do 1 meeting, you could do, like the 15th or somewhere in the middle of the month to kind of keep it. So,
I can go either way, I don't care.
And is it, let me ask one more question, is it better to have 2 scheduled and cancel 1, or to have 1 scheduled and add a second meeting? Does it matter?
as long, if you add any meeting, as long as we advertise a meeting a minimum of 3 days in advance, we're within, within the requirement. This time of year with the budget being behind us, the benefit of having less select board meetings is that it allows us, like for me personally, to not spend that time prepping to the meeting leading up to it and towards other things. And so with the transition of the bookkeeper leaving and things like that, it would allocate some of my time towards other things. But like I said, to me, it's not as much of an impact as I think to you, the folks who are volunteering their time for this.
I have a preference of 2 during the month of July and 1 during the month of August. And that in part is to allow access for a busy summer season for people to come to a meeting. If it's a short meeting, good.
Have you been to a short meeting? Not yet.
I'm okay with that.
You are, okay, so would that be July
That's a
1
compromise.
and 15 then?
July 1, July 15, and then, as far as the August, can we, stick to, how about August 12th to
Yeah.
put it smack in the middle of the month?
Yeah.
Okay. 1, 15. Okay, great. We can update the calendar to make sure. And then as always, there is some closures and, there are some upcoming meetings. The town website does get filled up pretty quickly, so if you're looking for up-to-date meetings that are coming up, I would encourage you to depend on that over the TA report, because that's more currently updated. That's everything as far as the TA report. The treasurer's report had a lot of information in it. It probably led to more confusion than clarification. We had the expense and the revenue report, which is kind of what the common document had been historically shared with the select board. As you're familiar, we have now transitioned, instead of having one fund, we have 5 different funds. And so we're still really trying to figure out what the best system to provide those reports. And right now, as it sits, it's several different areas where we have to go in and pull those reports. There was an Excel-like document in there that showed you the reserve accounts. Now that I'm looking at it, it is really difficult to see. Those reserve accounts, we are keeping a separate Excel document in our update in that, because what's with the bank is not accurate. We are currently working with the bank to go through the process to have those corrected, so that document would be more accurate. There is a document that I wrote on that says reserves going. These are the detailed expenses coming out of all of the reserve accounts to show you, so. When expenses come out of reserve account, the select board appropriates or authorizes me to expend, X amount of dollars. But not always, it's in one sum lump, so you will see that there's a lot of detail in there. With the reserve accounts, per Mark's recommendation, Mark Roy, the grants that are connected with reserve accounts, similar to the grant that we have for the Stone Pier. His recommendation was to have the expenses of the grants come and go out of the reserve accounts and in the reserve accounts. So that's why there are so many documents, because we have to go into one area of Trio to pull reserve accounts and to show that, but then a different area of Trio to show grant expenses that aren't connected with reserve accounts, and then a separate area of a Trio to show grant revenue coming in. And so if there's just Trio system doesn't have the ability to compile it all in one. So that's something, as we clean up and develop the process better, we'll likely have an Excel document that we will have to export. Ultimately, I would like to avoid that, because it's just an additional room for error, having a separate document to keep track. But this is where, there is a lot of documentation, and it is a little confusing, but it's another step further towards having it be more accurate than it had been in previous times. Questions?
And that won't change when you have to do the shuffle with the different accounts with Trio, that will stay the same way?
So because we did all this in mid-year, now that what we're doing is we're transitioning to a new fiscal year, and we've kind of shifted a lot of information to make it, so when we created the new general fund, all of those expenses accounts that were in general fund 1 have to be moved. So in the new general fund for grants, all new accounts had to be created, but then we also had to put in that budgeted number in there. And so starting a new year fresh with the created accounts will provide the best proof of accuracy. But this is, doing this mid-year created a lot of confusion for me, a lot of work for the bookkeeper. And I can only imagine the level of confusion is created for you looking at all of this. So I'm hopeful that it's continue to improve and it'll be that much better in the next fiscal year. But we're going from having everything in one document or in one location to 5 different locations. And now trying to figure out how to best pool the reports so they're transparent, but also easy to understand.
It's nice having the expenditures for the grant funding all broken out line
Seeing
item.
the detail.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's-
that's good feedback to know.
No, it's good, you know, I mean, maybe you don't have that in the summary report or whatever, but that it's available. It was easy to see where the numbers came from.
Any other questions?
Well, I agree, the grant report, which is one of the things I was interested in, it's good to see that. I was a little confused about, on page, well, it's 1 and 2 of the grant report. So there's, the stone wharf is 9,322, then there's 9,990 miscellaneous expenses, then there's 9,991 grant expenses. And I guess I was wondering what the difference was. And then what that number, I mean, the date in the column, is that the date the bill was paid or the date? So what is that date?
To the left,
Yeah,
that is typically when the journal was posted.
so I was confused because for the stone wharf, a bunch of invoices were just recently paid. So were all these journal entries made prior to that? And then, so that's kind of what that, just understanding when we look at these reports going forward. If we see 12/3/25, that means in December of 25, there was, a journal entry for the invoice.
Correct.
So is there any reason why those didn't get paid then at that time?
Which one are you talking about?
Well-
Say they.
The grant, we just paid a bill for, or we just submitted expenses for the stone wharf to the state.
Yeah,
But we hadn't paid a number of the invoices since before 20, back in the fall of 25 through
so
basically April.
these are all reports through May. And so anything that we've done since then wouldn't show on this until the next report.
Well, I don't have it in front of me, but so there were bills from, November, December, February. So were some bills paid and not others? Is that?
They were, so those bills were, you mean the bills on the last warrant? Yeah, so because those bills were on the last warrant, they were posted in June. And so they wouldn't be reflected in this report because this is the report, treasurer's report through everything to the end of May.
Okay,
So when I present you the report kind of through fiscal year 26, it will include the end of June. Those will be reflected on there.
all right, and then just my last, I guess. Miscellaneous expenses versus grant expenses, what's the difference?
So are you talking on
Page 1,
one of the expense detail report?
expense detail report, yeah. page
Reserves
1.
going out?
So on page 1 at the bottom.
Yep.
9990 and then 9991
999.
on page 2.
Grant. Miscellaneous expenses. I'm not seeing it.
It's at the bottom of page 1.
So the bottom of page 1 is 9990 miscellaneous expenses, then at the top, near the top of page 2 is 9991 grant expenses.
Grant expenses where it says like stonework improvement.
Yeah, I just don't understand how to read this report.
And this is where, I might confuse you trying to explain it. And when we created all of the different, when Mark created all of the different general funds, he also created the new 9,000 accounts. And each of the 9,000 numbers is a reference towards either a different reserve account or towards a different accounting, whether it's expense connected with a grant, expense connected with, a grant connected with a revenue. And so the 991 grant expenses, you have the 9322 is the
Reserve.
one that is everything Stone Wharf. And then, 990 miscellaneous expenses and 991 grant expenses. The 991 is specific expenses to, my understanding, this is where I wish Andrew was here because he could validate whether I'm speaking accurately. The 991 grant expenses, those expenses are specific to the grant connected to the Stone Wharf grant that is reimbursable. And so with all these numbers, they've been set up in a way where each number, depending on whether it's an expense just out of a reserve account or an expense out of a reserve account that then will be reimbursed by grant, each number implicates. So everything 9991 are expenses that initially come out of the reserve that then will be replenished in sense by the reimbursement that we receive from the grant. And then that revenue does not show up in here. It shows up in a different report, which is under grant revenue,
Which is this page,
which
right?
is
I've
the
seen
revenue
this.
detail report, yeah.
So to date, we haven't received any revenues for the Stone Wharf.
We've received it, but we've received it, that, and that will be reflected on the next report. What I did is I provided this report to the end of May,
Okay,
instead of doing it like a cutoff in mid-June. And then, you will see we have received the revenue, the reimbursement, it automatically went into the, checking account. So when he, does the reconciliation for May, and then we give you the report for end of June, that will be reflected in it. Similarly to this week, we got notification that we received the $50,000 grant.
oh, yeah,
That money went into our account, so on the next report, you will see that revenue in there.
okay.
And I'm sorry if I'm not explaining this.
Well,
It's hard to understand, but explaining it is even more complicated.
Well, and now what I'm seeing is that the numbers show up, for example, on the Stone Wharf under both categories, but then there's more under the grant expenses, and I think maybe it was like a journal entry that then he.
Yeah, and so
Grant
anything you
expenses.
see that has a negative associated with it to the
Yeah.
right, those were journal entries, either pulling that money out or reallocating it somewhere else.
Yeah, and I guess I can check in with Andrew. I just wanna understand, I think it's great to have the detail, but I'm not quite sure how to understand it.
Because what we
Unless
did
you're-
initially is we paid things out of a grant account. Miscellaneous grant, but it wasn't connected to any reserve accounts. Now it's being
Yeah.
done completely different, so you're gonna see a lot of negatives.
Yeah.
Because of journal entries that have to be done to reallocate the numbers. It's not physically moving the money, because none of these reports is actually physically moving any of the money. The
Yep.
money's sitting in the bank, it's more of moving the numbers from the different proper accounting.
And then I would just ask that it wasn't really possible to read the reserve account summary, so maybe you could send that in a different format to the board.
Yeah, once I looked at how it looks to you, it's extremely small.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I appreciate seeing the grant, like Earhart said, it's very helpful to see the grant. Some of these are closed out. So I don't know if they need to keep being reported, but I can explain to Andrew which ones are still active and which ones are, done. So, but anyway, I think that's good then, and also the FEMA money was on there.
Yes, and that's a completely separate bank account, completely separate checkbook, completely separate recording. And so because we have that all properly set up, and then we have GEI provided us all the bills for that, that will be an entirely a separate report.
Yep.
So. Any other questions? Okay, that's all for reports.
Okay, any questions from the public on the town administrator report, the treasurer's report, the grant reports, any of the things in the packet for reports? Nope, seeing none. So next we will move on to a public hearing for special amusements and victualers licenses for the Shabig Island Inn. And there is information in the packet. So I guess I need to open the hearing, right? So we're opening the public hearing for the Shabig Island Inn. And then there's information in the packet, the fire inspection. And I'll just open it up for questions first from the board. Any questions?
Just the pending inspection, that was the only question we kind of were talking about that. So there's still, the alarm system still has to be approved? Is that correct?
Yeah, I can't read that word. Is that what it's,
Well, this was a no, right?
right, and so what does this say?
Needed, I think. I
Okay.
don't know if that's what it said, but that's.
Do you know?
They don't need anything, they passed.
They passed?
Ian, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it says fire alarm, and that's systems in order. So I guess I do have a question since you're here, Ralph, on this report. There's a check for a no on systems in order. Fire protection systems in order, and it says no.
No, right.
And then it also says accumulation of rubbish and trash, that's a no, so that's a
Positive.
supportive
Yeah, I
finding.
the wrong box, but no, they had no violations of nothing in standings.
And then, and then at the bottom, under deficiencies, it says fire alarm system and sprinklers need inspection.
Yes,
So,
and then I did the re-inspect and they got it done.
okay, but we don't have the re-inspect.
That's-
So it says it is a revisit required.
So on, if you did the visit on 5/26 and business pass inspection on 5/29.
See that?
Oh, okay, we didn't know how to read that. Okay,
Okay, I have to say this.
sorry about that, we just didn't know how to read it.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So any other questions from the board on how to read the report? Any questions from the public or any comments from the public? So this is for the license for the Shabig Island Inn. Mark?
Just a quick question, if I may. What was the reference to the trash and rubbish?
Well, has trash and rubbish accumulated, and the answer was no by the inspection, so that means it's in compliance, so to speak.
Thank you.
Okay, and any other comments or questions from public? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, then we're gonna move on to regular business. So the first item on the agenda under regular business is to take any action following the public hearing for special amusement victualers licenses. So does anybody have a motion on that?
We,
2651,
I'll make the motion
over.
to approve the special amusement and victuals license for the Shabig Island Inn. 26051.
David,
Second.
David second. Any discussion? All in favor? Good. So that's approved. Next on the agenda is 2652 to appoint, this threw me for a loop for a minute, but to appoint a new select board member. And so do we have to swear the member in, or what do we need to do? Anything specific?
Do you just make a motion?
Yeah, just make a motion.
Okay. Somebody want to do that, David?
Move to appoint, let's see. To select board member.
Second from Earhart. Any discussion on appointing the new member? I don't think we have you know, any,
Just come into the town office and sign the oath, please.
okay,
Thank you.
all in favor? Okay. 2653 is to appoint a select board chair and a select board vice chair. Do I have any nominations?
I move to appoint Eliza Jane Adams as chairperson of the select board.
Any second?
Second.
Earhart, second. I think we'll do each of these well, let's do the nominations first and then, so we don't double up here. So, do I have a motion to appoint a vice chair?
Oh, I will, in kind,
Make a motion.
make a motion for Richard, Eckel as the vice chair.
A second? David? Any discussion about we'll take first the motion on the appointment of a chair. Any discussion on that? All in favor? And the motion on the appointment of Richard Hackle as vice chair. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Good. I'm gonna pass off 2654 to the new chair.
We need to move over there.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea, so you can have eye contact with the town administrator. When she gives you the hairy eyeball, you'll know you're in trouble.
Oh, I know that.
Mr. Chairperson, would you allow a quick comment?
Yes, let me sit down first.
Congratulations to Jane and Richard Hackle for being the new chair and vice chair of the select board. And I'd like to personally thank Carol White for her excellent job while she was there. Level of professionalism and dedication and preparedness is above none. Thank you. No offense.
Okay. I could just turn this off, hold on. Thank you very much. It's a tough act to follow, and I look forward to being tutored. Maybe not schooled, but tutored. All right, well, let's take up 26054 to discuss the current status of the EMS volunteer and per diem staffing for the summer of 2026. I know this has been on the horizon for a while and things have been in the works, so any questions or comments from the board to start with?
I guess because I communicated with him, I'd like to hear from Ralph,
We'll start with
fire
Ralph.
chief, to kind of tell us what, where things are at.
So, after a couple of meetings with all the EMTs, we've decided to try to get per diems for Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Knowing that we can't have 24-hour coverage, except for my daughter Lida might be working for us a little bit, so she's about the only person with a place to stay on the island, so that's kind of where we're at. And we're currently trying to fill those slots.
What options do we have so far, or what interest has there been?
We've got like 4 people, we have 1 application, came in from the town. What's that?
Sorry.
2.
Now we have a total of 3 that have contacted the department.
Okay, so, and we're working to try to work that out.
Right now, I think our advertisement, have they contacted us through the advertisement or through other channels? So that advertisement says Friday and Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So should we change it to say Friday, Saturday and Sunday?
It wouldn't hurt. I don't think it was change the applications, but I mean, it wouldn't hurt to be more accurate.
And then what is the plan? How does the transportation work on the mainland side?
So they pack it, Cousins Island, come over on the boat. Hopefully, first time people, we'd have to pick them up and run them through the whole process of, because this works a little different than mainland based EMS. So we have to walk them through everything, and, then they do their shift.
And so I guess I'm looking at the town administrator, where do we stand on parking spaces at Cousin Island? Is there one available on those days?
The current agreement that the town has with CTC is, Shebig has 2 parking spaces down there. And Shebig and CTC have a shared Google Calendar, and so Shebig needs to, put in at a minimum of a 24-hour notice that the town will be using those spots. If not, they will charge us $50.
So whose job is it to fill out the calendar?
The bookkeeper and I have been, depending who the request goes to, we'll go in and, my preference would be to kind of limit it to 1 or 2 people being in charge, so it doesn't open up a lot of confusion in a pool. And, Ralph and I just briefly in Earhart talked about what that process could look like.
Okay.
And keep making sure communication within the town is good to not pile up a bunch of $50 charges that are not necessary and are not adequately budgeted for.
Right.
What will the start time be on shifts?
Preferably they'd come over on the early boat, and then leave on 6:30. Yeah,
Do you pay them for when they leave the mainland or when?
yeah, I think we kind of have to, yeah.
And then I guess a question I have is when we put this in the budget, it was 2 12-hour shifts per week. And now we might have more. So do we have sufficient funding to cover that?
The new budget as of July 1st does not. So what is budgeted for is 2 12-hour shifts per week. For the summer months.
And my recollection, that was like on the order of $9,000 or $10,000.
Correct.
So do you have a recommendation if we strike gold and have more than, people covering 3 days, how would we pay for that?
So, the fire department in the last 2 years has done a decent job at getting grant money from the state to cover the stipends. And so, I would start by having a conversation with the fire department about whether that's still the process and to encourage that process, because that would open up, what, about 10 grand right around there, $10,000-$15,000?
15 the last 2 years.
Yeah, so that's, the combination of that and hope that that's received. And making sure that the rest of the department, doesn't go over.
Yeah.
But there is the town approves a certain dollar amount. The select board has the discretion to exceed it by no more than 10% before it has to go to town meeting. So looking at if people were hired, if at 3 days, if we're looking at the grant money, there is that flexibility, but also making sure that other department items don't go exceed dramatically. If they do, it would have to go to town meeting for approving additional funds.
But,
Okay.
so my question, well, 2 things. So the grant has covered the stipend, so if we take away from the grant, we're gonna have to come up with the stipend money.
Well, money for the stipend has always been budgeted. So,
It's in the
yeah,
budget.
it's in the budget.
Yeah.
You had said at the last meeting that, money wouldn't be a problem. We had money someplace that we could come up with.
Well, I mean, the board, it comes out of the fire department budget. So I think that's why I'm asking the question. So I'm just pointing out that we appropriated less based on what the request was. And I think my personal opinion is we would cover more EMS coverage. We'll find a way, but the board does need to decide how we would do that. That's all I'm saying. So I personally support as much EMS time as we can get, because I think it's quite a burden on the current volunteers. So That's why I'm asking this question at the board meeting.
Yeah, if towards the end of next fiscal year, if it's very clear that the fire department is going to exceed the fire department budget beyond the 10%, we would need to go to town meeting and ask for the appropriation of the money.
But that's not likely given the size of your budget and the extra amount you need, you should be fine.
Now, also bear in mind, we were budgeted for June, July, and August. We're in the middle of June right now, and we haven't had any per diem yet.
Right, and so
So
my
there's a surplus then.
right, and my recollection is it was on the order of $9,000. I think it's like, but the board, if we're gonna, the board needs to be aware and needs to, that's our job, to make sure there's money there to pay for it. So that's why I'm asking the question publicly,
Yep.
so. we're
I
all-
think, really pushing for that grant and making sure that that grant exists. It does cover the stipends, but what it does is, right now, there is money budgeted, as it should, for the stipends, not assuming that that grant money will come in. If the grant money does come in, then that's a cushion that then exists to be able to offset the potential exceeding of the entire department budget due to supplementing the need that exists now that wasn't really there to the same extent several months ago when the budget process was happening.
So I'm personally in supportive of really taking whatever EMS per diem time within reason that we can get, because I do think our staff has to be, our volunteers are pretty stressed. So I personally am comfortable with this arrangement, hoping that we'll get the stipend, but also given the size of this fire department budget, I think it's highly unlikely we'd go well beyond that. And as you say, we're into June already, so.
And
Go ahead, come in there.
And just, I have a question, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm glad you're coming up because you're
Okay.
so soft spoken, no one would hear.
No, well, I can yell louder.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as budget, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but I don't think, as far as the line item for salary, I don't think we hit that, so there is a little wiggle room, whatever you wanna say, in the number that we submitted for our upcoming fiscal year anyway, so I mean, because it all depends on how many calls we have. Now, since I've been there, we've had more and more and more and more, but so it's hard to predict. But there is a little bit of fluctuation in that.
Okay.
But then if I could just ask another question, is that all right?
Yes.
In regards to personnel and supporting staff that have to go to calls, we have up to 4 people that would leave the boatyard at any given time for a fire call, and that's not an issue. The boatyard is fully supportive of that. But now we have 2 staff members that work for the town. And I just want to clarify, they're working for the town, but if we need them for a call, is that going to be an issue? Is that okay? Like, if they can leave what they're doing? How does that work? Because that's 2 people that are here on the island during the day, which can be a problem because some of our firefighters in particular are working off island.
Right. Honestly, I don't know that we're prepared to give an official answer on that right now, so that's good to know. And the 2 are within Public Works?
Correct.
Okay.
So I just want to put that out there because I know that could be a complicating thing, but that's 2 staff that during the day that if they're able, that would be nice to have that.
So I'm assuming it would
Capability.
be if they're able and depending on what they're engaged in at the time, so that
Yeah,
there are a lot of factors that could go into that decision.
right.
So,
I mean,
okay.
just from personal experience, when I was working at the golf club, I had my monitor, and if it sounded like there were plenty of staff that,
Right.
but I did on a serious call, shut everything down and leave without telling anybody because we needed more staff.
Okay.
So that I don't want an answer. I just want to put it out there because I think it's something that needs to be looked at.
Yep.
How that works.
Good point. And I have one question. Oh, do you have? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, you're.
Is it for me or should I sit down?
Well, I guess personally, as a member of the select board, I would support having town staff respond to any kind of emergency call. I don't know why there'd be, and you know, unless they would know if there's something in the middle of the family, but
If
to
they're
me.
plowing the roads to keep
Oh,
them clear for
yeah,
the
well,
EMS, I could
obviously.
see that being a concern, but
Right.
otherwise.
But, you know,
I
I
just
just-
think tonight we can clarify, I hope that, yes, town staff can respond. I don't think it's something we can, you know, we need to wait on.
okay.
That's how I feel, but I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
Good with that, I mean, that might mean that Dunkin' closes, has to close or something.
Well, and everybody has their minute, or so you can hear if,
Yeah.
you know, if we know 4 people are going, then they're good to chill for a little bit and wait.
Well,
Yeah, they're really only issue, I mean, I agree with you that, you know, town's best interest for people to respond to emergencies. The really only question we have to clarify is if and when they respond, are they now on stipend or are they on pay? And I think-
Well, and that really does, it is the complicating factor,
Right.
like, how does that work? Like, I do the payroll for the fire department, how do I?
That's, I think, a discussion
Document
we
that.
could have subsequently, I don't think.
Yeah, so I think we could clarify
Figure
that.
that out. Yeah,
But by all means, they should respond.
yeah, I like that.
Hold on, David. Oh, David has a
I
question.
was just gonna ask, it would be inappropriate at this point to pass a resolution that would make that basically, as a standard, that we would support, the fire department, members of the fire department, the time off from the town office, or from wherever.
And then I don't want them to be penalized isn't the right word, but you know what I mean, as far as what town hours they have responsibility for to do in order to meet the contract that they have with the town to do
Yeah,
their
good.
work.
It's a good question.
I just, you know, how do I do that?
I think we need to take the time to figure that out.
It needs to be, yeah, I think it should be
I
discussed.
can tell you what we used to do when we were part of Cumberland, what Cumberland did. If, whatever town entity they were working for, they just got paid whatever the highest rate of pay was, so they get, if they went,
That seems logical.
yeah, it seems reasonable, because we don't wanna
Penalize them.
penalize them.
Correct.
And if they're doing something that they're getting paid more as a firefighter, then great, more power to them.
Reasonable.
That's a good suggestion, but we can actually make a decision at a meeting, I think, but that sounds like a good.
I do have one additional question with the candidates that have expressed interest. How does it get decided how the position is filled?
That's a good question.
So far, we've never had anybody wanting to work the same days. It's
Okay,
trying to find, so right now, I should be getting a text message from one of the guys that I work with in Portland, and he's gonna work in August only for some reasons. And so
okay.
we'll just take those 3 or 4 days off the books, and then we'll just be looking for whatever else. So it's really first come, first serve, and if they, between them, know each other and wanna change, that's fine, as long as we can fill the spot.
Okay.
So in other words, you have slots getting filled for July and August at this point?
We have some for August, nothing
We
for
have some for
July.
August, but not.
We're hoping. And it'll take a little time to get set up, and my hope is, once people come over and they say, oh yeah, no, it's actually kind of nice, and, you know, I know one of the guys that used to come out here, he'd go down in the Niblick for lunch and just really enjoyed the environment. So I'm hoping the word would spread a little bit, and people would be more interested in coming out. But we'll see where it goes.
For next year.
Ralph, do you just have any kind of internal process within the department, just how you're sort of vetting people, particularly people you don't know, but just, you know, the discussion with
So, yeah, I
selecting a
guess
couple of
this-
board members,
Yeah,
a couple
it's
of
a
members.
process, because I've
Right.
never asked anybody to work over here, or had somebody working over here that I didn't know.
Right.
Or didn't, you know, somebody that I knew them. You know, I did a background, an informal background check on them, because we want to have the right people as well. So it's kind of a new process, and give them an interview, maybe over the phone, maybe they come over, depending on their schedule and what they want, and, but I should be able to find out something about any EMTs in the state that's gonna come to work over here. It's a small world.
Yeah, just given that it's an employment opportunity, seems some, you know, at least minimal vetting process that's sort of documented is probably in the best interest of the department and the town.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely.
Any other questions? Good. Any questions from the public?
I was very brief.
Stand up.
Um. I fully understand the demand and shortcomings of the Cousins Island parking lot better than most, actually, all the years that I served on CTC in another town. And I understand that that has to be managed. But I find it a little bit bothersome to hear that the Chebig Transportation Company is prepared to fine, quite frankly, the town of Chebig, who is the lessor of that lot from the Department of Transportation for EMS coverage that is suffering. And thank you to the department for trying to solve that. That's not something that I'm interested in hearing as a longtime dedicated volunteer and resident. And I would like to know from the Chebig Transportation Company, I'm asking you to consider asking this question, is that a board policy? Because if that's not a board policy, then I don't think it should be implemented without the board and being aware that it's going to be possibly implemented. And I think the transportation company needs to understand that the money can get mixed up in any direction, but it's all coming out of our pockets. Thank you.
We'll talk about the license level
Yeah, I mean,
that's pertaining
Yes.
to the.
yeah. I think
Thank you, Mark. Yes,
Okay. So I think we talked about this a month ago about the DEA regulations, and we've looked into it in depth. Matt Grossnickel did a ton of late work on this. Lida helped quite a bit as well. And Denise and Matt and Lida and I had a meeting, and it was pretty clear to us that we cannot maintain the paramedic level license. So our plan is in August, the end of August, to drop our license level down to the advanced level. And there's been a lot of discussion, because Lida seems to, I'm excited to say she's seems to have some interest in working over here a little bit. And that's gonna change what the paramedic can do. And I'm getting clarification in writing from the state about that. And we're working through that, but that's our plan, moving forward.
so thank you, Ralph. So just to clarify, Lida is a paramedic.
Yeah.
And if she is here, she can work as a paramedic until August 30th,
Until we drop whatever the. date
until
gets.
that changes.
Yeah.
Okay. And while we're on it, what about the qualification of the people that have indicated interest?
Most are paramedics.
Okay.
Right.
Good
Yeah, it's something
information.
to work through, but, so, just so everybody knows, so. We're like most services, we're licensed by the state of Maine through Maine EMS as an EMT. At the EMT basic level, but we're permitted to the paramedic level. It's some red tape stuff. So we can have a paramedic work here, but we have to have at least a basic on a call. And that's pretty much the standard. There's a few services out there, Portland is different and stuff, but that just allows us the ability to only have a basic on a call. So dropping the license level down, the biggest thing is, because we don't have a paramedic over here very often, we have no paramedics that live on the island anymore. So it's really the per diems that we're hiring at this point. And that's probably gonna narrow our pool down a little bit, unfortunately. But we just can't meet the regulations, what they want us to do.
Thank you for putting all that work in. Thank you for that report. Any other questions? Any other comments from the public? Any other action we need to take? Well, see that one? Thank you, Ralph. Okay, let's move on to 2655 Gent Road parking improvements. Status update, and we're gonna look at authorizing funds from the contingency for construction. Would you like to start?
Yeah, so in the select board packet, there is, I hope what is a pretty detailed memo about a little bit background of how the town got to where they are today. A few weeks back, this proposal did go in front of Board of Adjustment Appeals. It was approved with a couple of small little, contingency items. And so the next step is really to engage in construction and relocation of parking spaces. And so the GEI proposal is pretty detailed, so contractors would have a pretty good idea of what needs to be done. This particular project, unlike the next agenda item, did not have any funds allocated for construction. And that will obviously cost some money. I have reached out to GEI and they were hoping to, by the end of this week, provide me some cost estimates of based on their work with us and designing this project, what they think it would cost. And that would give me a better understanding of when I'm engaging with contractors who would be interested, which I have one that was interested already. What kind of ballpark we'd be looking at to ensure that we're not receiving super high estimates on such a project. And so looking at this particular project, the select board reserve account that is kind of the coastal erosion storm damage is the appropriate location where that money could come from. There is some select board contingency that is available that has been unused. And so my recommendation to the board, in hopes that you are okay with that. This is the last select board meeting of the fiscal year, and so if the select board contingency doesn't use, it will ultimately, get put into undesignated funds and so forth and so forth. And so rather than waiting a couple of weeks when we have an idea of what the cost estimate be, and then at that point really having the only opportunity for funding to come out of the reserve account, I'm suggesting that the board authorize the ability to expend up to $50,000 out of the select board contingency. So then we at least use some of that money, and then when we know the exact dollar amount, which I suspect is gonna be a little bit more than this, then I would, bring forth the rest of the recommendation to the board.
And so you think it will be more than 15,000 to do the work? That's what you're expecting?
I
Or
mean,
it's
in today's
unsure at this
economy,
time.
yes, I do. The work at the Hook, when 3 years ago, maybe it was, when there was the discussion of building, that quote was 19.5. So the select board had that select board at the time had authorized that expense. And so just kind of looking in terms of comparison, how many parking spaces. I assume that this is going to be a little bit more, but at least this will allow the ability to expend the select board contingency, because once we hit July 4th, that select board contingency will no longer be able to be utilized.
Very good.
And the planning is essentially done, so is these funds will actually be going towards construction?
Correct.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah, so the select board had appropriated money for GI to do the design work, so the engineering costs have been covered. This is really kind of allocated it towards the construction.
Richard,
So this may not be appropriate for this part of the discussion, since this is about funding for it, but having had a couple of open meetings in the past month or so with neighbors and a point was brought up that I hadn't even thought about, and then I thought about it. That is, having to do with the design of the place. We've been going back and forth about 3, 4, or 5 spaces, how many spaces we've decided on 4. Somebody said, why don't we have a turnaround space that's no parking, drop off only, or turnaround, which would mean a 5th space. So I would like, I think that's a great idea. I don't know if that's appropriate for us right now. Does it affect the budget if we were to go there and do that?
Yeah, I think that the plan has already gone before the planning board for the 4 spots.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
plan is, once the construction happens, so this is kind of in conjunction to what's happening closer down the beach, there is a sand dune grant. So, the sand dune will be, hopefully, planted. Once the construction of these 4 spaces is complete, the rocks that currently exist where they are now will be moved, so then people don't just continue to park. There have been some discussion about, because people can drive, all the way down and then they would be back up. There was discussion in the initial discussions about being able to have a turnaround area down there, but ultimately there was kind of the concern of that people will use and abuse that. People will take advantage of handicap parking spaces and things like that, and so this plan was designed in a way that people will pull in and then be able to back out. And the reason that it was done that way, which is typically not favorable, is because it's not a main, road. It's not as busy as North Road and South Road, and so that was kind of appropriate, but you can't really go outside of what Board of Appeals approved and just simply add additional spaces.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of information that should have been brought forth at the Board of Adjustment Appeals hearing, when the Board of Adjustment Appeals was making a decision of whether to approve this or not. But we cannot go outside of what was approved.
Yeah, whenever this meeting was recently. It's just unfortunate we had a public discussion and then, well, we can't,
But I think it was mentioned at the Board of Appeals.
was it?
Yeah.
Right, but it also sounds like it was discussed earlier in the design phase.
Yeah.
And voted against, so.
And I think we can all agree that having these designated spots is the first step in preserving public access. And we know that with the pressure upon public access to our beaches, will 4 spaces be enough? Well, certainly not in the future. So this is gonna have to be an ongoing question that we have. But I'll tell you, I like the design of it. I like the design with the ropes and having it be an attractive looking design.
It's just, I brought this up only to be concerned about this
But I-
turnaround problem.
Right.
And what we're gonna see. And if it doesn't become a problem with the way it is, I'm fine.
This is also an area that, so through the budget process, if you recall, the parking attendant position was increased a little bit to 2 hours a day. Understanding that if the town is making the effort to update and improve parking areas at the Hook and Jenks, there needs to be some enforcement associated with it, so the parking attendant will be having those spots as added locations that they visit on a daily basis to ensure that the parking is being properly followed based on what is supposed to be.
Thank you.
Kara?
Yeah, I sort of have a similar concern that it was someone with a mobility impaired family member who was concerned about being able to drop them off. And so we do have a pretty significant right of way, and it might be that there's adequate space to kind of make a turnaround, which isn't really I think it's a potential that we can do that as part of the whole thing. It is a town right of way, and I don't think that's a planning board. It's not a planning board or Board of Appeals thing. The other thing is, I just think it's very important that we include signage in the cost for this project and the hook. And then I also think we should get on the stick, because it won't take long to construct these, to review the parking, the board to come up with what the parking requirements will be. Is it no parking down below? You know, like, I think we need to get that straightened out and make it public. Give people a chance to comment on it before we adopt it. So I would hope we take that up sooner rather than later. And I think that would require sort of modifying our parking. Rules.
The ordinance.
Specific location.
Yeah, right now we have a number of specific locations we address in those rules, and I thought this would have to be the same. But I also think it should be an opportunity for the public to comment before we adopt them. And make it clear that we're talking about them, because there'll be some flack. And then, you know, like we did on the stone here, maybe we tweak them over time. And amazingly, people have seemed to have adjusted to the stone here. So. I'm looking forward to getting this done.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you for bringing it up. All right, any comments from the public about Jenks parking? Mark?
Very quick question. Is it 4 spaces or 5?
It is 4.
Okay. If someone drives down and the 4 spaces are taken and they'd really like to go to Sandy Point and they're able to drop off their stuff or individual or whatever, will they, in your opinion, be allowed to tastefully park on the side of Jenks Road anywhere?
That was part of the discussion in the initial implementation of this. And that was, I don't want to say intentionally not included in this particular, application to Board of Appeals, but it was added in the parking and traffic ordinance in the anticipation of these kind of discussions. And so there is language in the parking and traffic ordinance, and it's been a while since I've looked at it, that unless, you know, parking on the side of the road permitted by the town or language similar to that. And so with this, what we had discussed in the kind of the development of this is looking at the full length of Jenks and possibly squaring away 1 or 2 other sections and marking them that's saying overflow parking between these signs or something like that, just to make it, assuming that there's going to be more than one of the parking spaces is primarily for fishermen, so you're really looking at 3, assuming that they're gonna be used and taken up, but then having very distinct marked areas where the overflow would be, but distributed in a way that not one particular house is more impacted than the rest, through the process.
Thank you.
But because, am I correct that that parking should happen further up the hill than further down?
Correct, it's not gonna happen closer to the water.
Right. Thank you, Mark. Anybody else? Carol?
I just said, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the town administrator to expend up to 15,000 from the select board contingency fund for fiscal year 26 to support construction of the Jenks Road parking improvements project, including cost estimating, contractor engagement, and construction activities.
Second.
All in favor?
Second.
Yes, we got a second with David. All in favor?
Well, discussion, any
Oh,
discussion?
discussion.
That's the deal. Road is funny.
No discussion. Now can we go? Do I have to do the public again? Okay. Let's see, vote of hands, unanimous. This is great progress. Let's look on to the hook. And we're at number 26056 with the Hook Road Indian Point parking. Again, we're looking at a reaffirmation of approval, construction authorization, signage, and traffic calming coordination. So Vika, you want to?
Once
Talk
again,
about it.
there's a hopefully detailed memo for you in the packet. This was the other application that went in front of Board of Adjustment and Appeals. This is one of the very first things that I started working on with Indian Island when I became a town administrator 4 years ago, so I'm really happy to see that there might be a finished project at the end. And so, like I said, a couple of years ago, the select board at the time did approve authorization. It was $19,500 for construction. So where things stand, technically, I have the approval from previous board to kind of move forward with the construction, but for the sake of making sure that everyone's on the same page, I wanted to reaffirm in some ways, an updated motion because, in addition to this having been approved, there has been some additional conversations that have been taking place about, proper signage, possibly, adding some, speed bumps is really the best way to, just ensuring that, while the parking spaces get implemented, that traffic both ways is safe in a way, and there's signage, in a way that people don't, know where the overflow would go and don't park kind of up the hill, up the curve, creating, confusion and danger and, congestion. And so, the purpose of this is really to make sure that the board is in support with the direction that the staff is going in, and if not, to provide some guidance as far as what your suggestions are. I did connect with the contractor, so Stu Brown was the contractor who was chosen out of a couple different contractors. We had received quotes to do it. He is still interested in doing it. Probably unfavorable to some of the people that are in line waiting to get work done by him. Is willing to work with the town to implement this sooner than later, knowing that, this particular project, I think if my memory serves me right, the code enforcement officer was in the office on a Wednesday. The construction was supposed to start on Friday. And he came to us and said, you can't do this. This has to go through, at that point, planning board approval. So this is the third Memorial Day where I was hoping to have this be implemented. And so we're looking at through GPGOG to see, if we can get some assistance, through, I think, a State of Maine Bike or some bike organization about.
Bicycle Coalition of
Yeah,
Maine.
some, and so if the board is still in support of us engaging in that, that's kind of the direction that I'm looking for, tonight from the board.
Okay, this approval is really two parts, sort of reaffirming the project itself, which sounds like.
The appropriation, yeah, just,
Already been
so
done.
money, a vote was made to appropriate the money, so technically I have that authority, but it's a whole new board and the project is happening under a whole new
So it's just
board.
affirming what's.
And so I wanna make sure that this board support still exists, that the money is gonna come out of that. So the reserve account that this money is gonna come out of was at one point, Indian Island retaining wall or something like that, hook retaining wall, I think. And so it was reappropriated to change, but it was done so with the understanding that whatever the work is done for this particular project, that's where the money would come from. And so with the new board, I want to make sure. And then as far as like the traffic calming techniques and things like that, that's some feedback in terms of if you want us to continue in, utilizing taxpayers' funds, engaging our time in finding additional solutions for that.
Okay, but the funding that's been approved that's not included in that funding. It would probably be additional funding. And I assume there would be so sort of like part two, there's probably gonna be some public comment about traffic calming measures, and then there'll be costs associated with it, but those costs are not associated with the monies that have already been allocated.
Correct, and those traffic calming measures, and Carol's had her raise up, she could speak to, we're trying to find, so it's not anything that comes at an expense to the town. That it's something that we can get, donated or through a grant or something like that, so.
having,
And so on the, just an update on the traffic calming, first we tried, GP cog offered when we had our parking meeting last August.
Yeah.
They mentioned they have the speed bumps for traffic calming, the community was very interested and very concerned about the corner there by the hook. So when we contacted them just recently, they're not available or they don't have the funding, I don't know exactly, but GP cog doesn't have anything. But they recommended the Bicycle Coalition of Maine. I think theirs are also free. So I think it's a good idea. Definitely the residents in the area were very keen on the idea. So I think if we can get them for free, we should definitely do it. And even, you know, I don't know what they would cost, but if it turns out we have to purchase them, maybe we do that. I don't know. But I do think I support the entire proposal, including the signage and the traffic calming, which is a little more specific than what we approved years ago.
Yeah, a few years ago was just the appropriation for $19,500 for construction of the parking at the hook.
But do I understand we don't need any more money at this point?
And that's, I've engaged with the contractor and, I gave him the plans and asked him to look and to let me know and said, this is what's been approved. If it is gonna, you know, it's also been 3 years, so the market has changed. And so I wanna make sure that we're not at a big surprise, which I don't think that would be the case, but that if he's still interested in doing this project, that we get an updated quote if there is, and so, I talked to him on Friday, he said he will let me know, and he didn't seem like there were any concerns based on the current. The only change is there are some planting and they're roping off. That's, that's change from the initial, but it's 3 spots, not 4, so there's some fluctuation and some minor changes, because of that, so.
just for the sake of the board, I just wanna give the heads up though, having been on an HOA, having earned the moniker, speed Nazi. Because I advocated for putting speed humps in the neighborhood where there were lots of children. And, that while the neighbors in the immediate area, we all, myself included, need to see that corner slowed down. I do think it'd be reasonable to expect that we might get some pushback. So just be forewarned. But totally support it.
Okay. And also just to note that, making sure that signage is a part of that, because that's,
Support.
we all understand the importance of accurate signage and making sure that that's supporting what we're doing.
I did actually have a question. Was there any discussion about where overflow parking signage was gonna be? Because we'll have the same issue that they'll have at Jenks.
No, it would be. I'm assuming, I remember we talked about having it be further east, do we call it east or north
North.
on that road? Yeah, on the right-hand side, so I think that's an issue we should talk about when we're covering signage, yeah. Richard,
And it was also brought up at this other meeting a month ago, where we had public forum, and it was also in a letter we got from.
Ted Brown.
About doing more bicycle accommodations, because that might be the more popular mode of going there now that you can't drive all the way
Sure.
down.
Right, and-
Ride bikes there.
And also to help with making sure that that road is kept clear for people, the residents that's just down that road, right,
The bikes will clutter it up.
right, okay. Wait a minute, do we do a motion and then public discussion? Yes. Do I have a motion to reaffirm?
Is a suggested one.
There is a suggested motion in the packet.
It is.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
To reaffirm the town's approval of the Hook Road Indian Point parking project as previously permitted, authorize the town administrator to proceed with contractor coordination and construction of the approved design. Direct staff to install appropriate municipal parking signage and authorize staff to pursue traffic calming technical assistance through Bicycle Coalition of Maine for this and other locations on it.
Great, do we have a second?
Second.
Earhart?
And And I just, in terms of discussion, we're not gonna install anything as far as signage or anything like that, that will. Be brought back to you for discussion before that happens. If anything, if. The big thing is if, with this now being approved. What you might see, and I'll definitely keep you in the loop, is if I haven't anticipated, like, we could start construction on this date. I will try to, give you as much notice as I can, but as far as signage and all of that will come back to you for discussion before any of that goes up. Or purchased, if that matter.
Thank you. Right. Anything else? Any public comments? Thank you.
Dave Runner, joining property owner, but, been involved in stewardship and public access issues that go up. Thank you, Vika, for sticking with us for so long, and other board members. Sorry, Bob's not here to see this actualized either, but, just sharing some experience of the, situation we had some years ago when the parking was down below. With the gravel pad area, it's really hard to delineate the stalls. And we would have issues with, at that time, there were 5 parallel stalls together and then a turnaround space back up the hill. We had continual problems with people parking kind of higgly-piggly and not leaving space for 5 to actually be there. So maybe, like 3 could be accommodated, and then people were parking in the turnaround area. And so it wasn't clear. We looked at ideas of maybe some raised stones, painting them white. We put signs along the side of each stall, small stakes with signs that were numbered, thinking people could assign a car to a number. But those just got backed into and destroyed with them on. I've seen the GEI plan, so I realized there's a 50-foot wide section, which is traditionally 2 parallel stalls, but we have golf carts that pull up, dune buggies. I could see 1 golf cart pulling forward, a dune buggy pulling in behind, they're right in the middle. The first vehicle leaves, and then 1 dune buggy in the middle takes up 2 parking, so those sorts of things. And I don't know the answer to that, but it's just something to consider. And the other thing is just the enforcement of, where people would be parking, the overflow is going to occur. I think it's a great start. I mean, 3 stalls, would cover this time of year. Widening that shoulder, getting the vehicles off the road is fantastic. Everybody can support that, but I'm wondering if we're really solving the entire problem on a busy summer weekend. So I guess I would suggest in sensitive areas where the curb and visibility is harder, that those would be the no parking signage areas, and then those could be enforced, take it in, for instance.
Yeah, and that is the intent.
If
Yeah.
there's not no parking, then people can naturally queue back.
Yeah.
Further down North Road. And do it that way. And then just also reiterating, I think Ted Ballard's comment about the bikes. The bike rack there is fantastic. I think it's held up pretty well. If people use it, but it's just, there's overflow there on busy summer days, so. Second rack would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I think, anybody else? Mark?
Ron, to be quick again. I'll be surprised if I see speed bumps on Chevy. I'm not completely not understanding of what you're talking about, that people are driving too fast around there. And when more people arrive, it's pretty dangerous. Here's my point. Usually, unless they're incorporated right into a parking lot or a road, speed bumps are seasonally applied and drilled into my beautiful pavement. So please, if you drill down into the pavement, make sure those holes are properly filled when removed. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it will be helpful to hear what the Maine Bicycle Coalition comes up with for possible solutions.
I understand.
Yeah. Right, duly noted. Anything else?
Take a vote.
Got a vote?
Let's take a vote. All those in favor? Here we go. Good night.
Thank you.
Next, 26057 to authorize the town administrator to expend up to 15,000 from the select board contingency fund for contracted services to cover the general contracted service with GEI. Thank you, Vika. What do you have?
There is no memo for this, but if you recall, a few weeks ago, you approved the contract, the general contract with GEI, and we have a cap there for up to $15,000. The cap is primarily for them to, you know, to not exceed a certain number. Last year, that money was, excuse me, appropriated, used, and so with the new fiscal year, you approved that motion. That money will need to, it's general contracted services, but that money will need to come out of somewhere. It's different from, you know, appropriated in a specific dollar amount for stone wharf or something like that. So rather than the town coming to you every time there is a $2,000 invoice or a $3,000 invoice, once again, because this is the last select board meeting of this fiscal year. If you recall, I believe in March, there was a special town meeting that appropriated up to $30,000 to select board contingency specific for contracted services, limited to included but not limited to GEI and Mark Roy. A good chunk of that money was used. And there is, right, so we still have a couple of bills coming in, as we will naturally over the next couple of weeks. But we're looking about anywhere between maybe 11 and 14, $15,000 that we could have in select board contingency. That would be, you know, specific for contracted service. So what I'm asking from the select board to use that money versus having it go to undesignated fund and me having to come to you every time for those little dollar amounts, that you appropriate up to $15,000 out of select board contingency contracted services. So we can pay for that $15,000 and then they can kind of work off of a credit. Instead of doing it the other way around, because the other way around, most likely the money would need to be appropriated from reserve accounts and I think it would be wiser to you know, use up the money in contingency versus go into reserve accounts.
Good. Thank you very much, David.
What's the status of our contingency?
So the money that I'm asking, you'll see there is up to 5. What Andrew and I did is we sat down and we looked at select board contingency. There was regular select board contingency. The select board had $30,000 to work with. And the town meeting appropriated an additional 30 specific to contracted services. So we went through and figured out what has been used for select board contingency from regular select board contingency versus contracted services and figure out what the up to amount we could have to work with towards the end of the month, which is why you're having all of these different motions to kind of expend that contingency and appropriate. So I'm saying up to 15 because that's why, you know, would be the maximum if we don't have, you know, any additional bills come in, but, you know, reaching out to GI and asking them to look into providing us a quote for what Jake's Road estimate would cost, you know, that would be, you know, contracted services expense. So it would be up to 15, no more, but probably somewhere between 11 and 15 is what we would look for that actually would possibly cover from select board contingency based on what's left, will be left over after the currently appropriated expenses have finished.
Any other questions? You want to have a motion?
I make a motion to authorize the town administrator to expend up to $15,000 from the fiscal year 26 select board contingency to cover the cost of general contractor services with GEI.
Second.
Second Earhart, in favor? Move.
Again,
Oh, I forgot to ask the public for input. Any discussion from the public? Okay, well, thank you very much. All right, moving on. 26059 to review and discuss, 26058 to authorize the town administrator to expend up to 5,000 from the select board contingency to install an LCD screen at the town office.
I'm gonna turn this to
I-
Carol.
Yeah, so I have a question though, because when I was preparing this, I was thinking there was only one other 15,000. So I'm not clear on how much money we have available. Total,
So we went through, and, Andrew and I made sure that, that all these motions, would have the funding. Yeah, I mean, we literally, what he did is his guru in Excel, he put in all of the invoices of regular select board contingency, all of the invoices for contracted services. And then anticipating, if we engage with Mark Roy between now and July 1, that's an expense that would need to come out of this. Hence why it's up to 2, because the max, that's what we assumed the maximum could be, but it might be less. And if it's less, then, then it is like for the select board, for the authorization for GI, if it's less than 15, then whatever the difference is, I will then come to you and ask for appropriation for that, so.
Okay.
so this was, my suggestion after traveling around to a bunch of town offices, most of which have LCD screens in their conference rooms. And also working with the finance committee in particular in that room, where it's been difficult to display the Zoom screen at the same time and hear people talking, and we've got people on multiple devices kind of virtually participating. It's just less than satisfying, and it's also a little bit more technically complex to try to figure out how to connect the computer, whereas what I believe most of these have is just a single HDMI cable and adapters to connect to a computer. So there's kind of just less technology to deal with. And so I did ask, and one of the things we were thinking is the library is installing that equipment in their larger conference room. So I asked them what they're doing. They went through a local company called Pro AV. They didn't know offhand how much it cost, but they thought it was a couple to $3,000. I talked to the tech guy that runs the Island Institute conference, board meetings. And he thought we could get something for, $2,000. He didn't think we'd even need to spend that much. So I just thought I don't know if anybody's experienced meetings there, but it's been frustrating trying to get people connected. So I just thought maybe we could, it's not a huge expense, and I think particularly the finance committee has been using that quite a bit. So that's my suggestion, but it's not, I'm not gonna die on the hill.
Just some thoughts on that?
Yep.
So if we're gonna go through the effort to put an LCD screen, which has to be internet connected, why don't we put in a smart TV?
Yeah.
As opposed to just the LCD, and couple of reasons. One is, the purpose that you've mentioned. Two, if there's disaster, storm, emergencies, things where we have the office up and running, it's kind of one of the emergency locations. It's really helpful to have on the news available that's being broadcast. And then, kind of on a side of in a conversation with Ralph, that space, when we have per diems in that space during the days while they're waiting for calls and such, it would actually be really nice to have a television in there where they could watch. It's a little perk that might entice people to come. So I think we could accomplish, sort of 3 missions with one device.
And can I just add, is there a plan for where it would be placed? Because there's the whiteboard there now that's used.
I guess we can talk with the fire department. I don't know how much you guys use the whiteboard. Most people are using LCD screens instead of whiteboards.
We use it quite frequently.
What
So-
about over in the other corner, the corner where that where screen is now?
You can mount them, you can mount them so they angle out.
Okay, so that just making the point
I
that there
would
needs to
say
be.
you would coordinate with the fire department on
Okay.
the location, but I do think that, that's the most logical location right now, and I think trying to be compatible, and I do think a smart TV, which is maybe my lack of terminology, but that is what most people are doing, and so. I just think having a space that's a town space where we have access to that, it doesn't really make sense to set it up in here, it's not big enough, but.
How big of a TV are you talking?
I don't know that that's been determined at this time. I think we need to look.
We need to kind of, I know the library
Right,
has,
50-inch, something in
yeah,
like that
50
range.
or 65 inch, something like that.
Might fit over there, I'm not sure, it's,
Okay.
but,
It'll be standoff, it would be a standoff.
those are smart TV. I mean, that's well under $1,000.
Well, that size, they told me it was about 1,200, so I think that's, well, with the arm, you know, you gotta get a movable arm, that's almost, you know, that's $200. So I do think, yeah,
I bought
And
one for my house,
articulated-
it's for like 50.
well,
Well,
anyway.
we haven't looked into. it, so
Yeah,
we'll look
no,
at
no,
it,
no.
yeah.
We're not gonna break the bank, but it's easier to give ourselves, I think we'll be closer to 1,000 to 2,000, but I didn't wanna hamstring us if we feel like we need cables and other things, and so that's what I would recommend, just no limit.
And can I just add, when the rec center did the big TV, I was a part of that, and that became problematic because of some technical issues. So going through a company that is already working with the library, if it was a similar type of
That was-
technology, that is great, because people will understand the same technology in two locations. But I think talking with a company that does this, it makes a lot of sense, and they can keep it. We like to use the word evergreen, so it will work for a while. So,
Yeah, and
yeah,
I think we were trying to mirror what they're doing to make it easy for people and not have to have Chip or Rich show up every time we have an event.
right, that's
That's-
great. Okay,
So I'll make them.
Okay.
To authorize the town administrator to expend up to $5,000 from the maybe surplus or whatever fiscal year, I'm just saying fiscal year, so we know, select board contingency to install a screen, an LCD or smart TV screen at the town office. That's not okay.
Yeah.
Smart TV screens, maybe.
second, Richard. Okay, any more discussion here? All right, any more discussion from the public? All right, let's vote. All in favor? Thank you, Carol. All right, next, 26059 to review and discuss the proposal from Owen Haskell Incorporated and determine next steps. Once again, it's good to see these things moving ahead, and what do you have?
So you as a board had asked me to engage with the, Owen Haskell.
Yep.
And receive quotes, and so in the packet, there's a memo with their proposal. At this point, there is no funding allocated, all of these are relative to FEMA damaged areas. There is no funding allocated for them, but, if the board wants to proceed with getting survey for all of these areas, then, what I'm suggesting, and there is a suggestion motion that you just authorized me to proceed with this, so it would authorize me to sign the agreement from Owen Haskell. It is 8 to 10 weeks out before they could start on the project. They have done quite a bit of work for the town, so I'm hoping if the board approves this, then we can see if they can maybe squeeze us in a little sooner, considering this is all connected with FEMA and there's time restraints associated with that. And then in addition, in the motion, it includes that, coordinated with FEMA to determine whether surveys are part of the cost or could be. Typically, it's not something that was in the, reimbursement of money that was handed to us, but then they did tell us in writing that the GEI engineering work for South Shore Drive was included in it. So if this is something you authorize me to move forward with, I will double check and make sure to try to see if we can get some of this funded by FEMA. And then proceed with determining what the next steps would be for getting a lot of these areas fixed. The helpful part is knowing what the town boundary lines are important to know what, which areas you're gonna invest in potentially. Some of taxpayers' money or even, FEMA money to be able to not put yourself in a position of having to give the money back when you get the construction done only to find out it wasn't on town property.
Good point. All right.
So our approval of this resolution then would, understand that FEMA may or may not
Correct.
fund it, then we would essentially be approving the amounts that are in their proposal.
So these are, yes, it's, they have it stated, you would be authorizing me to sign the document to let Owen Haskell to proceed and put this on theirs. Understanding that these are going to be their fees. And then if we get an invoice in the future and it's different, and if FEMA is not covered by it, it would be coming in front of you as a motion for appropriation, from a different funding source or to cover the cost difference if it is more. Having done, I mean, at this point, I think probably 4 or 5 surveys, in the time I've been here with Owen Haskell, they're pretty consistent with their numbers, at least they happen with the town.
And Kara?
And if we were going to fund this, say FEMA says, no, we can't cover this, what would be the suggested source of the funding?
So right now, the suggested source would be coming out of the coastal resilience, coastal damage reserve account. That's the most appropriate one, but based on how the descriptions and if, reserve accounts are funded or combined in the future, it could open up more of a flexibility where that money could come from.
But I mean, we do have money in reserve accounts to cover this if we had to.
Correct. Yeah, I'm just ultimately trying to avoid using reserve accounts and finding other sources of money.
I think that's a good plan. I think the other part is it's really good. We've done a number of our right of ways already and these are the other big ones. There's a couple more, but these are the other primary ones. And Willow Street particularly and Waldo Point are both high priorities. But when we start doing construction and design work in these areas for FEMA, we really have to know the boundaries. And we kind of found out the hard way by trying to do it without, and then we had to go back and start over again and get the boundaries. So I think, however we end up having to pay for it, I'm pretty hopeful that FEMA will cover the cost. So I feel confident that they might pay for at least a good portion of it. So I would recommend that we approve this.
Do you wanna make a motion?
Oh,
Right, yeah.
just move to authorize the town administrator to proceed with the proposed right-of-way boundary surveys by Owen Haskell Incorporated, and to identify, pursue appropriate funding sources, including coordination with FEMA to determine eligibility for reimbursement or inclusion within applicable projects.
Thank you. Second? Earhart? All right, any more discussion? Thank you. Public? All right, let's proceed to a vote. Those in favor? Here we go. Unanimous?
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we get to talk about our retreat goals. This was good to go back and look. So number 2660, we're going to review our annual retreat goals and assess progress and what's been accomplished and what has not. and develop recommendations for next steps. And it is in the packet. It was good to go back and take a look at what we thought we would do. I think this is the second year of having a retreat. I thought it was very useful. It helped us to focus on what we wanted to do. And what do we have for comments? You pull it up.
First of all, I'm interested to hear from DEP,
So
barging.
the ones that I'm familiar with, I'll just start. So the barging, we had, a number of discussions with, GEI about, so they had gone pretty far down the design road. We decided as a group that we would get what's called an advisory opinion on the proposed design. And the advisory opinion came back from the DEP, so this goes through the Attorney General's office on whether or not we could construct the design that we had proposed. It was a little, and I know Joe intentionally vague, but the read from the engineer in particular is that the design as proposed was not permittable without some other change in the rules. So basically, as it stands right now, that particular design wasn't permittable. So that's where we are, and we've just sort of been on hold. We've kind of put that on the back burner and moved on to other things, not to say we shouldn't revisit it. And so I think, I think there are alternatives that we can pursue on this, but the board needs to take it up as a, topic. So maybe we should just quickly go through the numbers of Eliza.
Yep. That's number 2. Thank you for that report, Carol. We're gonna talk about the CTC agreement and take a look at how the responsibility is shared between the town and CTC and the main DOT. And for financially sustainable maintenance of the stonework infrastructure and parking lot stakeholder needs. So I know that Richard and I with Vika have been attending the CTC meetings. That's been moving ahead well. It's right now now that the budget is done and the town meeting is done, we're looking at setting up another meeting to look at some next steps. We're developing an MOU that is good progress, and several steps still need to be taken to come up with an MOU that will be helpful for both stakeholders. And also mindful of what Mark had to talk about, where parking, the parking limits by CTC for access by the town is clearly an issue. I think we can say that includes the school as well, because that's it's all coming out of our taxpayer pockets when those spaces are paid at a premium, so that will need to be looked at some point. But what we talked about was that we would attend the meetings. We've been doing that, so I think we are moving ahead with the plan in that regard. Richard, what do you want to add?
Oh, just that I was impressed that the only MOU, if it was even called that, came from years and years ago.
Right.
And it was essentially one sheet of paper was an agreement, and so we are working on a bit more robust MOU, which is just a good way to put it on paper and not just make assumptions.
And am I correct? This will be the third one, isn't that correct?
Yes, and
This will be the third.
one thing that I would add to that is, so there was an MOU, we had a conversation about it. CTC put in their suggestions, and then we met because there were a lot of suggestions that they had that would not. I think, in my opinion, I don't want to speak for the select board members that were representative of the town's needs. And so then the budget season started, and we kind of stalled and re-engaged with free parking versus paid parking, things like that. And so now that the budget's over, I have to go back and kind of input what the town needs would be. once the subcommittee agrees on it, before anything is agreed upon, it will come to the select board, and the whole select board needs to be agreed on it before that MOU is implemented. So I just want to make sure that the board is aware of that, that it's, well, we have made some progress, it is still kind of in very early stages. The final decision has to be on the board level.
Carol?
Yeah, and I just wanted to remind you guys that we did get a grant from the Maine Postal Program, and part of that grant is to work with the stakeholders, CTC, Maine DOT, and the town of Yarmouth on the Cousins Island facilities, both the wharf and the parking lot. So that would be starting sometime, we just got the grant, so it would start this, probably not the summer, probably this fall. So, and that has some designated stakeholders, you know, like coastal waters and others, so I do think that that would be important input. You may want to develop your MOU, but there may be some additional work that's being done to hammer out, in particular, the parking lot use, I would say would be.
I'm sorry, and Carol, does that cover infrastructure or process?
That
That
doesn't want
grant,
to cover that.
pardon me, the grant, I mean, does the grant cover physical improvements or the process of moving to that?
It covers stakeholder meetings, and
Okay.
it covers a conceptual design
Okay,
for the wharf and a cost estimate, so we can give that to the finance committee in terms of what the capital cost might be. And the reason we split that with Yarmouth, so we're both stakeholders in that.
80-20. 80-20 we started, right? Okay, good.
So I do think that's gonna be important. It's gonna be important to have the right people at the table. I think DOT paid, so that's gonna be a little different than what we've, you know, than just us meeting with CTC.
Yep. Okay.
So it's good, I think.
It's expanding, okay, good. Oh, man, number 3, Stone Pier. Let's talk about parking on in Wharf Road Solutions to meet stakeholder needs of the Stone Pier and bring recommended actions to the investments of the 2026 town meeting. So where do we stand with that?
Well, we did the informational sessions.
Yeah.
Here, which was helpful for the community, and I think we have ironed out some design elements, along with the parking and, pedestrian traffic and such. Last I knew, they were doing core sampling. Did that happen yet?
Yeah, so I think in February, maybe we approved the next phase, which was a 30% design.
Right.
So as they got into that, they felt they needed to do some geotechnical testing to figure out what kind of structures they could put in, so they did that. And my guess is, originally it was supposed to be done by the end of May, but they had to do the drilling, so I think it would be within the next month or so, we should see the 30% design. That's an important check-in point on the kind of, traffic flow and dimensions, and then, I think it's going to the next step after that. We did also check in with coastal waters with some question, because DOT had some good input on float reconfiguration. So we brought that, Steve and I went to the coastal waters meeting. I'd say they were generally supportive of those changes.
Okay. Anything else we want to add? Vika? No? Housing, the Housing Task Force will engage with the community in developing recommendations for how the town can best support sustainable, accessible housing for year-round residents, which will be considered by the select board for adoption at the next town meeting. And Carol, we haven't spoken about the housing opportunity funding. I know that there was talk about a variety of ways that we're going to use that, but I'm really pleased to report that Housing Task Force is being very productive right now. I think we are close to feeling ready for developing phase 1 of a plan for multiple pathways for year-round ownership. We just completed a survey of 8 housing authorities up and down the coast of Maine, all nonprofits, including one from out of state that the group had looked at quite a bit, but taking a look at 22 questions about what are these organizations doing? What, projects are working? What are their funding sources? So, that's been completed. Taking a look at how do we want to proceed. We also have looked at, some good pro forma information about what are the costs. We're looking at ADU sized structures, for homeownership, but the big focus is to look at, home ownership with covenants for year-round residents to maintain that, so that would be in the deed. We're looking at how that can work with our zoning, how that can work with, making sure those structures are available at anywhere between 80 and one island is up to 200% of adjusted median income for Cumberland County. The Main State Housing Island Program looks at 140%, but I think that when we look at what the cost of living out here is, we'll come up with a recommendation for where we think the price point needs to be to develop solid opportunities for year-round ownership. While the priorities for year-round residents, that could also potentially include people that are not currently year-round residents, but would like to be. And one of the things that opens it up to are people that have left the island and would like to return. Also housing for people that are wanting to downsize, because we've heard about that as well. So anyway, I'm really pleased with the patience of our town administrator, the patience of this select board in getting this committee up and running, and I'm pleased to report really good, solid progress in a hardworking group of 5 committee members working on the housing.
And just to bring you up to speed on the grant, we received a $50,000 grant, I don't know, a year or so ago.
Yeah.
We applied for it quite a while ago, and we were able to get an extension on that grant just recently, so we have. I forget, I think it's through early spring of next year to spend the money. It is really allocated for example, updating zoning ordinances to be compatible with housing changes, so we can hire professional services to do that. And there are people out there doing that for other communities, so that's primarily what the funding's for. We also, I think we have some latitude, and Vika and I probably need to catch up with the grant administrator too, because she was anxious to have us extend it, and we were like, well, we really haven't done anything on this yet, and she's like, don't worry. So I think we do have to revisit kind of what the scope is, because it's been a while. But anyway, we did get a chunk of change, and it's available to us to support primarily ordinance updates to, be compatible with, supporting housing and other, other land use things. So
I think that's gonna come in gonna be real important to be able to do that. Thank you, Carol.
right.
Okay, great, thanks. Beach erosion, gonna do a
Yes,
Oh.
so that one was, Ellie was working on a draft and we actually approved. So Loren, I think, picked up the ball on that when Ellie left early, and then in the fall of 25, we approved that resolution to kind of prefer nature-based solutions over hardened shoreline, in the recognition that's better for beach preservation. So we did that.
Yeah.
Completely.
Really well done, too. That's it. Yeah, and good attendance as well. And I know there's more planned for the summer. We're talking about how people can,
Yeah,
Is
we've
there-
got to stand new brands, sports, more stuff. Yeah.
coastal erosion of South Shore Drive, best practices with partnerships, being able to accept private money now. What do you have on this? This is with am I correct with the idea that,
So this one, when select board had this retreat, there was, in my opinion, a pretty heavy push from the residents in that area to, engage in, private funding, but there was some connection with the decision of which project maybe they wanted. At least that was my understanding, and so where it stands now, the select board, and you could speak for yourself, made the decision not to engage in using private funding for municipal infrastructure because it comes with strings attached and, having the feeling of, being able to make some decisions and, South Shore Drive, is something that, GEI has worked on a design. The design, is in, in kind of in final stages of being designed. I reached out to them this week. I have an email that, I need to forward to all of you. What they're gonna be doing, the next step is going to be to submit a permit to DEP like everybody else does for coastal, erosion work. And then it will come to the town for approval in front of the planning board. And then the goal is to go to construction in, late, winter, early winter, late winter, early spring.
Okay,
And have it be constructed in this fiscal year.
great. Anything else? We talked about low hanging fruit. We're working on a comprehensive plan, so the survey is out. I think that we still need to encourage more of our friends and neighbors to complete that survey because we need more input. But there you go, Carol. And did you meet with the Office of?
Yeah,
Community
Loren and
Affairs?
I met with the main office of community affairs to look for, to get some guidance on the plan. I would say it was a bit underwhelming, but not a roadblock at any rate, so.
I know that there are things planned for this summer. Anything else? Next, we do need to be continuing, as always, to talk about Bennett's Cove and giving the existing barging activity and information that we have already in this meeting. What do we need to do with management of Bennett's Cove in partnership with neighbors and the stakeholder needs? And Richard, you've met with people?
We had two meetings, one was on Zoom and one was in person, I believe. I wasn't in, we had essentially going over the concerns, as we've heard frequently of the concerns of the neighbors. And then balancing that out with the needs of the town and how we're gonna put it all together. I think first off was the barging that Carol addressed earlier, that's being addressed at Bennett's, I believe. And then
I mean, the design.
The design,
issues.
yeah.
Yeah, well,
No, we're not doing anything.
No,
Right.
no design will come here.
That's right.
we have to figure out what the next step is,
Yeah.
because they basically
Yeah.
said no without saying no.
But then the issues of
Yeah.
overnight parking and all that is just dependent on enforcement.
Yeah.
Parking attendant.
And who's that subcommittee with you? Is there somebody else on that with you?
David.
I think it's David.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How has the, well, and now would be the time to release the enforcement, but how has the enforcement upgrade gone? Has it helped?
We have a
We've-
witness here. I think it's.
I understand, we had a booth.
What I'm getting at by saying that, yeah, I think groups have worked. According to Vika's report from months ago, we started to implement them.
Have we,
So the boot has been implemented at the Stone Pier a handful of times. As far as Bennett's, I think unless you have a full-time patrol there 24/7. It's really difficult to implement because people are continuously leaving their vehicles idling and parking in places that there shouldn't. With the last meeting that the town had with the stakeholders where it was left over is this summer, there will be a stakeholder discussion that would be facilitated. I have not initiated in that with the stakeholders because if you recall, a few weeks back, the select board did agree to have some GPCOG funding that we received to be reallocated towards some towards some traffic studies. And so GPCOG is working on a proposal of what that could look like. Often with those kind of studies, they're associated with cameras. If you recall, there was a pretty intensive discussion about not having cameras. And so those kind of discussions are delaying the stakeholder discussion because when we go to the stakeholders and have it be facilitated, there really needs to be a plan and a process and something new and more than what was discussed last fall. And so the goal is, GPCOG did not get around to providing that information to us in time for this meeting. It got to us later when the agenda was already finalized and the packet was already done. But the goal is to connect with them next week and to finalize what that traffic study could look like to really get us exact information on numbers, specific numbers of what that traffic is like down there. And then that ultimately will be valuable information in determining what the next steps are and how to manage with it.
Very helpful, yes,
Has
yes.
there been any discussions about, like, when a parking enforcement officers on duty having a cell phone that stakeholders down there can actually call saying we have this parking issue? So there's some, sort of active heads up for the enforcing.
With the parking attendant, it's only up to 2 hours a week, and I would have
A day.
concern, I mean, a day, I'm sorry, I would have concern of giving out, if we're given a phone number, then we're paying for that phone, there are additional costs that would be associated. I do get emails from residents, letting me know if there's idling, and I forward that information to the sheriff. The best way to really deal with that is to call the non-emergency 911. But we don't really have kind of on the moment having somebody that can, and then, with the sheriff, he'll go down there when he's able to, but people would be shocked, he's dealing with domestic violence, like he's dealing with some things that people don't even know about it because we're not supposed to know about it, so he's not always able to just directly leave and go
Right.
down there, so it's an ongoing concern and an issue that we've yet to really figure out how to fully deal with.
Can we do public comment at this time, or do we need to wait?
That's for you as a board, I don't see
Okay.
why.
Jackie, would you like to have a public comment?
Yes, see if I can. Complex, I would be interested in Richard's comment, testimony about his experience today on the Bennett Cove Road. After I finish. Last summer I did call and speak with Christine because a golf cart was, as I described to Christine, parked on the ramp. And it was parked on the family was swimming and so forth, and they just chose to park on the ramp. And I think the barge was coming, and the sheriff did come down and ask them to move, and, per my observation. And after the barge came, I think, I forget, they moved back onto the ramp. So anyway, the situation that I hope Richard will comment on today involved a lot of congestion and people coming down the road and then seeing all the congestion down at the bottom, deciding not to come and backing all the way back up the road. So I've heard a lot of reference at this meeting about signage at different locations. And, and plans for signage. So I would like to see a no idling sign down at the bottom again.
Okay,
Cause there's a lot of idling.
there still is a lot of idleness. Any change at all you've noticed?
Well, no.
Okay,
I mean, how would they, unless they read our town ordinance, how would they know they're not supposed to idle?
thank you, Jackie.
Richard, I hope you'll comment on your experience.
Now, but,
I do.
okay,
It must have been frustrating.
For me, it actually wasn't. I was trying to time it because I knew the barge would be there at high tide. And I felt I was lucky that I wanted to launch my boat, as a private citizen, so I just waited until they were done. And there's still some time, but, so it was kind of different from what we're talking about. To me, it's a once a year event, so it was not a stress on me for that, so.
But you're not the only one,
It was crowded,
launching a boat,
yeah, but
or frequently a jet ski is launched down there.
yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, so it's an ongoing, but my experience today was just a nice summer. I'm not a resident there, so it wasn't as significant effort as it is for you to have to deal with the, as you're describing, the extra traffic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah.
Continuing on, the next we have our 2 Island Summit coming. This is very exciting. Looks like we are getting a date, and really thank you for pulling this together. It is so many pieces to put together, but I think it holds good promise for both Long Island and Shabby to be working together, and there we go. Good progress. Stone Pier status. Oh, any other comments about the 2 Island? I know we're all looking forward to it. Stone Pier status? Earhart, what do you have?
Pretty much I mean, a lot of this was handled in discussions and with the plans, being submitted, various drafts and plans. We never got to a fact sheet because it was, eventually we did the public meeting, which was quite a bit more informative, but I do think the point of this being important as we make progress. Whatever the next step is, letting the community know that as it happens.
And I forgot until you just mentioned it, that Addison made what's called a story map, so he's got a online narrative with maps and photos of the various infrastructure projects that we have going on, and that's one way we can provide. Oh, great. And I don't think he's made it live yet, I don't know, has he, Pika?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, so anyway, he started it, I think it's easy to update, he can do it, I can do it, it's pretty simple, but when we get a set of draft 30% plans, we can put those up there for people to see. I still think sometimes, an actual physical fact sheet that we can leave around would still be good, but I do think that was the mechanism that we thought, the DOT uses it a lot. So they have a project, you go and you look up and you can see all the different elements of the project, what the schedule is, what's happening, what phase they're in, and that was kind of, we just modeled it after that.
That's great.
Yeah. But we should make it, available. I think it's, behind a curtain right now.
Okay. Hey, great. Looking forward to that. When it comes to broadband, we've been through a few phases with Axiom, but are things up to date at this time? So thank you for access through the Main Island Institute and getting that all payments are up to date. All right, anybody else want to add anything about Axiom?
No, we had suggested doing, like an anniversary,
Oh, right, a celebration.
celebration, but I think.
Our plates are full.
And yeah, getting the payment was more of a priority.
Right. Maybe, I mean, they would be due in this fall, like September, so.
Yeah.
Certainly can reach out to Mark or Webb and,
Yeah.
check on the broadband committee as well.
Good. Other background, I really just want to highlight the capital plan this year with the finance committee has just been helped to really move, I think, our island into the adulting phase of finance and really preparing us well for what we need to do in the future. It was good to read that. Yes. All right. In our parking lot, we were gonna convene the Island Institute for a conversation with Axion, so that's done. Short-term rental ordinance, I think that's gone by the wayside, enhancing the town's planning capacity. seasonal staff for parking. So again, we're working on that with, CTC. And up to speed on what's happening with the Cousins Island Power Plant. Well, we'll still wait and see what you have on that. Anything else people want to add? I am personally looking forward to another retreat. I love that stuff.
I think they're very helpful.
It's encouraging to look at this as well. Okay. Any comments? Let's move on to 2661 to authorize the town administrator to sign the CMP proposal pole application for pole on North Road. I was reading this. They're just replacing poles. Is that correct?
There's one replacement and one addition,
Right, to go around the corner. Or to, anyway, could you
right on
explain
North
it?
Road, right, kind of across from the Division Point Road, right in that area, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, like where those, when they had the low wires.
Yeah, right around there.
Right there.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it just because CMP is putting poles on town property and they're required to ask the town for permission and it has to go through select board approval. Code enforcement officer does look at it to make sure there are no issues, and so once he okays it, then it comes in front of you. You've had a couple of them this year.
yeah. So he's looked at it, he's approved it.
David, have you seen it?
David,
Yeah, I move to authorize the town administrator to sign the CMP proposal and full application for a pole on North Farm.
thank you, David, second, Richard. All right, discussion. I just want to know if the pole they're taking down, we can use for a post for our parking. Wouldn't that be an excellent reuse of sustainable products? Okay, any comments from the public? Thank you very much. Let's have a vote. Those in favor? So moved. How are we doing? What do we have for other business?
I have several, I mean, it's other business / communication, just kind of other things that we've been working on. So this time of year, I do start receiving a lot of emails from residents coming in, and so between potholes at the Stone Wharf to road visibility, idling at Bennett's, broken punt tie-up rail down at Cousins Island. I've received a lot of communications and I've either directed Public Works to deal with them or had them put it on or asked sheriff to go down, things like that. We have engaged in some communications with Island Institute to replace Loren. We did receive an email and hopefully we can have some interviews set up. There is one candidate that they have available out of the current cohort that they interviewed. That we can interview to see if he would be a good fit. If not, then they'll advertise for the position. GPCOG, the parking study, communications relative to that. Communications with a gentleman by the name of Justin Berg, who is an auditor, who Mark Roy had connected us with. Hopefully, by the end of this week, I'll hear from him whether he wants to take us on as an auditor. And bookkeeper, I've received a couple applications through Indeed for the replacement for our bookkeeper that is leaving in a couple of weeks. I have some, I kind of call them filtering interviews on Monday. If they seem presentable, then what I'll do, I have two lined up. If they seem like they're decent candidates, then I'll, we'll set up an interview and I'll likely ask the chair of the select board or somebody else on the select board, Mark Roy, to join in on those conversations for that. So, yeah, those are some other things that we've been working on. And I think that's it. I probably honestly have forgotten something, but that's it.
I have two to report on. Maddie Daughtry and her entire office, she's president of the Senate, is coming on June 30th. They're going to be at the rec center for office hours. The office hours will run from 11 o'clock to 12:30, when people can come in and meet with either Maddie or other people in her staff. But after that, there is some time set aside if people with the town would like an audience with Maddie as well. So I think I'm really pleased that she's coming up with her organization. And I think it would be a good time to educate them on the projects that we face and the challenges that we face as well. So I'd love to give a tour. So it looks like maybe 9 or 10 people will be coming, and there's gonna be we have a flyer now, and I'll get that posted around the town. Also, I did get a communication about the boat that was continuing to be at the stone pier that's sunk and needs to be moved. So I just wanted to let you know that I've received his information.
The
Comment
owner of
about
that
that.
boat has until July 1st to remove it, or they will be, asked to pay for the fees if the town has to remove it.
Very good. Thank you for that update. Right. Anybody else? Yes.
So two things. One was at the last meeting, we kind of went through all the committee reports. Mika took a stab at sort of a response based on our discussion. I've edited, what I did too was address some of the suggestions that they made in their reports. And so before we email those back to each committee, the board, I will share, so they're done. I will share them with the board. And I would say if you can review them by Friday, then, Eliza Jane can send them out to, or Vika can send them out to each of the committees on behalf of the select board. So this was our review process of kind of what they're doing, what we'd like them to do in the upcoming fiscal year, what we want them to focus on. So, it's important that everybody, some of them are very straightforward and some of them we're asking them to, do specific things like coastal waters. And that's sort of, for example, coastal waters, we decided that we wanted them to look at the situation at Cousins on the floats. And Vika and I independently both experienced quite you can't even tie up over there and it's quite a cluster. And so we've asked in this, correspondence have asked coastal waters to consider, what might make sense for at least a short-term management plan there. There's more non-resident boats over there than there are resident boats, and they're big, and that's a problem. So yeah. And then the other problem was we had people tying up here on the Shabig side in the area that's usually set aside for loading and unloading. So we weren't able to tie up to unload, and a number of other people, so, and it's just, again, we've just gotta manage those, and without a harbor master at the moment, it will be too much challenging.
The sheriff went down and put signs down today.
Is that who did that? Okay.
Yes. He was in the office and he got challenged with that task, so.
And we got there on I can't remember, it was Saturday or Sunday, and I was getting ready to say something to the people tying up, but it was not obvious that you couldn't tie up there because the signage was quite small on the pole. There was nothing else obvious, and so not necessarily their fault that they didn't get that, so.
We also ordered a stencil, instead of having little laminated pieces of paper, I had Krista look in and order a 2x2 stencil, so we can have Public Works spray paint the stencil right on the decking, so it's not an 8.5, 11 piece of paper that's gonna get destroyed.
Great.
And then. Sitting here patiently, I think David Werner sent us an email asking the board if we could do a workshop on the public safety building on August 6th, which I responded that the board would decide if they want to. So I'll let you take it from there.
So thank you for your patience. Maybe if I'm better at this, I could have moved you ahead, but so the facilities committee has been moving forward with a plan for phase 1 of a public safety building, which will include 3 bays. And are ready to look at a public engagement process. That public engagement process will look at what is planned right now for phase 1 and what are the costs involved and take it away. So looking at the date of August 6th.
Right, Thursday.
So would you like to come up and tell us what you'd like us to know, David.
Sure, just a brief summary of the discussions of the committee. We felt it was important to have the involvement of some summer residents, just general community interest. But we also wanted to give enough time for us to develop a thoughtful presentation, workshop outline, as well as let the finance committee continue some more of their work on the general capital improvement plan. We probably won't get any clear numbers by then, but they're working. We've met with them last week and they're working a couple of models. The power project might fit into the big picture of capital improvement. So, and then, but we didn't want it to be too late as far as missing summer residents. And then if there were to be a referendum at the November election, that gives us a little bit of gap time in there if we want to make some adjustments to the proposal or referendum language or postpone to a later date. I think our drop dead date is still spring of 27, when we'd be looking for a CDS grant application process for storage. So it's a Thursday night. The hall's available. I didn't see any of their municipal meetings for August 6th, 7 p.m. We've got finance committee commitment to be involved, and that would be the notice and select board representation.
Okay. Any questions?
Well, just a comment, I think at our last meeting, the board talked about sort of the charge of the facilities committee, which is a little more global than just the public safety building. So I think, and you'll see it in the email, what we discussed was sort of making sure you go back to the original charge of the committee, which included, the administration and the public safety building. And I think it called for sort of short-term and long-term needs and, so like when you came and presented to us last time, it was primarily about the public safety building, but in this public outreach meeting, I think the board's expectation is that you may not have the numbers for the whole fully phased out project, but it needs to be clear to the public that that's only a portion of the project. Does that make sense? So I think it's, I think when we got into it at the select board meeting, if I remember correctly, you said you thought the administration side might be like 25 years into the future, and I think Vika was like, that's not gonna work. So I think it's still sort of to be determined, but I would hope the facilities committee could kind of move that part of it down the road and include that in the public outreach part. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'd like to anticipate as many questions as possible and talk about this in the context of bigger issues. We've been talking with Addison about energy, for instance. Would this be a not a further contribution which affects our solar credits, for instance? Is the building technology that we might use? Are there other grant opportunities for alternative energy, things like that? So we want to address that. We want to address the capital improvement issue, as well as the town office needs. And we have a study from Port City that was, but we just haven't made any recommendations on the timing of how that. And maybe that's some more work with the finance committee.
Yeah, so I think it is probably a three-way kind of conversation, because the finance committee can kind of predict when that phase could be.
Yeah,
And-
before we buy the next fire truck. A big buck, yeah.
And adding, and this is, this from my participation on the facilities committee, that the original plan looked at needs for the fire and rescue department in full. Also the needs for the office staff, because the expansion is needed there. And also the original plan included housing for the sheriff that would move into the fire and rescue side when that moves over, and that still needs to be addressed, and whether that's within the facilities committee now, whether we need to address that, but we know that's an issue that we'll need to face for next summer. And, so not sure how much to press upon the facilities committee to take that on, since this is a big project as it is.
And I guess one other comment I have is that, you know, at least what I've heard prior from the facilities committee is, you know, asking for half of the project cost for a CDS. I would not sort of make that, you know, I think you could ask for more. And how, in my experience, preparing CDSs, it's congressional office that kind of gives you a threshold. And it might be bigger, so maybe you ask, you know, 2/3 of it, I don't know. So I would be careful not to say it's only gonna be half. Because I don't think we know, and, you know, we've had one we got, we've had one we didn't get, it's pretty iffy, so. But I would encourage you to think about asking for more than half if you get the green light from the congressional office, because there's sort of no downside, and sometimes they will then fund only a portion if they don't have enough. So,
Okay, and conversely, I think I've heard you say also be prepared for not getting CDS funding. You know, there's a particular senator that has influence that may.
well, I mean, I think we
Around
don't,
this spring.
right. Well, I mean, even with the senators who are around, I mean, one, Senator Collins is very successful with CDS funding. But the other senators just have a small part of the money, and in some ways, you know, you still have a shot there. I just think that even the process, they have to pass a budget, which seems to be like an impossible task in Washington, so. Unfortunately, we were allocated 2 million 2 years ago, 2+2.2 or something, I can't remember. And they never passed the budget, which is disappointing, to say the least. But, and I do think it's been made clear to us as the town, as we've applied, that you really need a fair amount of support in the community. The more you can demonstrate, the better your chances. So, you know, having, you know, being able to show community support such as referendum and letters from the public and that sort of thing. I will say Harpswell right now is, I think, on hold with their $6 million. They allocated 6 million locally, and then they got a CDS, and now they're kind of on hold. And, you know, so I think the fire department projects in particular, it's important to try to be as transparent as possible, so you don't get down the line and have people balking. Yeah,
Was that on the CDS side of the?
I think it was the town meeting appropriated 6 million, the CDS was already in hand. I think it was sort of you know, some people pushing back about how, you know, we talked 7 point something million, and do we really need it at this location? Started to be questioning the whole thing because the magnitude of the cost. So, just in general, yeah. So I think they are on hold on that, but I mean, it might be worth talking with them just to get their experience.
Okay.
They're a little bit dysfunctional like we are as a community, so they'd be a good choice.
I just want to add one more thing. David, it's such a pleasure to work with you. And a lot of time and effort goes in on the part of David and many other people, but I really just want to say thank you for your commitment, your stick-to-itiveness, your flexibility, and it's much appreciated, especially since you're doing it, so much of the work from afar. And
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate your role as liaison too. It's been very helpful.
Thanks. It's my pleasure.
The minutes, huh?
Excellent. No, we have to approve the minutes. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the minutes of June 3rd? So moved. We have a second? David? Any discussion? In favor? Thank you. Items to be placed on a future agenda.
Well, the whole parking ordinance, you know, parking.
Parking.
I think we get it on that. I think we need to allow public input, because it's not gonna be well received perhaps.
Okay.
And, I think it would be good. maybe at the second July meeting, trying to get an update from GEI and for the board on film here. So I'm gonna say to them, we'd like an update by then. That gives them a month. That's reasonable.
Okay. Anything else?
Oh, I'm already working on the next agenda. It'll be a full one.
I personally, I would like to sort of hear, and it could be from Vika or the fire chief, in their
Oh, and that's
report. I'd like to hear every meeting where we're at on EMS because it just feels a little tenuous. I think just understanding, yep, we've got people in place and it's working, or no, we haven't been able to get people,
Good. Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
I'd like to say something. I intended to speak during the public comment, but I didn't get it quite in time.
Now would be a good time. Thank you, Jay.
Very briefly.
You sound like Mark when you say that. And he does a good job of it, actually.
Yeah, he does.
Nice. Thank you, Jackie.
I just wanted to verbalize my grave concern about the fires in the Chandler, what I call the
Oh,
Chandler's Cove Field near the monument.
right.
Donna had posted something on Facebook several weeks ago about her concern. I don't go down there very often, but I went down to look around, and although my granddaughter Mabel does not participate in parties, fires down there, she reported to me last weekend that there was a fire. I mean, she has, a pipeline.
Thank you.
And of course, I would like to see a patrol of some sort.
Okay. Well, we're not going to give any specific information on patrols, but I can just say that I share your concern with that in many ways. And regarding fire safety as well as disrespect of a really important memorial. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing.
Yeah, I was worried about that when you came in. I was like, oh, we'd already started. Anyway, thank you for sticking around. All right, anything else? Motion to adjourn? Thank you, Earhart. So moved, second by David.